The message came in just as I wrapped up the final merger documents for a tech acquisition. It was December 22nd, and the Chicago skyline glittered beyond my office windows. Harper, honey. About Christmas this year, with your brother Mason bringing his new fiancée. She's a TV anchor, you know. We thought it might be best if you sat this one out. You understand, right? Love, Mom. I blinked at the text. Then I smiled, tight, amused, tired. After 15 years, nothing changed. Even with all I'd built, they still saw me as the odd one out. What Mom didn't know was that the freelance analyst she barely acknowledged was now Harper Lynn, CEO of Limbridge Strategies, the firm quietly steering some of the biggest business decisions across 3 continents. My assistant Janelle buzzed through the intercom. The executive team from Marotech is ready for the call. Thanks, Janelle, I said, straightening my navy silk blazer. They all still assumed I thrifted my clothes, and I let them. 15 years ago, I'd walked out of our Minnesota farmhouse after refusing a role at the family firm Lynn and Mason Holdings. You're being selfish, my father had yelled. You think you know better than all of us? Mason had chuckled from his leather chair, arms crossed. Let her try. She'll come crawling back. I never did. I moved to Chicago with nothing but a laptop and a vision, and I built Limbridge from scratch, working impossible hours, risking everything. Now, Limbridge quietly owned minority stakes in half the firms my family dealt with. There was a knock. Miss Lynn. Janelle entered, holding a thick folder. The contract from Lynn and Mason Holdings, she said. It's ready for your signature. I smiled. So they needed help after all. I picked up my pen. Actually, Janelle, cancel it. Merry Christmas. The irony tasted better than any holiday wine. Lynn and Mason Holdings, my father's legacy firm, had spent the last 6 months scrambling for a strategic alliance with Limbridge Strategies. They had no idea the company they were chasing belonged to the very daughter they'd cast aside. I glanced again at my mother's message. Need to maintain a certain image. My email chimed. A new message from Mason. Harper, Mom told me about Christmas. Don't overthink it. You know how she gets with appearances. Besides, Melanie's career is very public. It's just cleaner this way. Maybe once you're established, things can go back to normal. Once I'm established, I echoed silently, staring at the 7-figure deal waiting on my desk. This partnership would unlock Lynn and Mason's international operations, a lifeline for them. I knew from our intel how much Dad had been boasting about it. All it needed now was one thing: my signature. Janelle returned, holding an iPad. Your father's on Zoom. He wants to confirm tomorrow's contract ceremony. I nodded and picked up the call. Harper Lynn speaking, I said, my voice calm and clipped. I always used my mother's maiden name in business, to stay hidden. Hey, everything, my father said, chipper and formal, a far cry from the man who once called my startup a waste of potential. Just checking. Everything's on track for tomorrow, right? This deal is vital to our future. I thought of the Christmas dinners I wasn't invited to, of Mason's smug emails, of years spent as the family shadow. Actually, Mr. Lynn, I said slowly, I've been reviewing the terms. I have some concerns. Concerns? His voice cracked, but everything was approved. Things change, I replied. We should discuss it in person. Bring the whole family to the ceremony. Lynn and Mason is a family company, right? Of course, he stammered. My wife, Mason. Melanie? All your children, Mr. Lynn, I said firmly. A pause. Then a softer, well, Harper's not really involved. All your children, I repeated. Understood, he murmured. Good, I said, and hung up. Tomorrow would be interesting. After my father ended the call, I leaned back in my chair, staring out over the glittering Chicago skyline. Tomorrow, my family would walk into Limbridge headquarters, expecting to meet a powerful but nameless CEO. Instead, they'd come face to face with the daughter they had dismissed and forgotten. Janelle stepped into the doorway once more. Shall I prepare the executive conference room for tomorrow's event? I nodded, running my fingers over the embossed contracts. Yes. And, Janelle, Make sure the photographers are ready. I want the moment fully documented, every single expression. That night, I stayed late, planning each detail. This wasn't just a signing ceremony. It was the moment everything would change. My family was obsessed with image, but they were about to see what earned power looked like. And Christmas? It would never look the same again. By 6:00 omitting, I was already in my office. The 47th floor conference room gleamed. Fresh orchids. Imported wood conference table polished to perfection. Floor-to-ceiling views of the frozen lake below. Janelle appeared, calm as always. "Your family just arrived. Shall I bring them up?" I checked my reflection. Gone were the soft sweaters and modest shoes they were used to. Today I wore a charcoal Armani suit, Louboutin pumps, and my grandmother's Cartier watch, her final gift to the granddaughter they all underestimated. "Let them wait," I said, smoothing my jacket. "I'll make an entrance." 20 minutes later, I stood in my private elevator, watching the floors pass. My phone buzzed. Another message from my mother. "Harper, where are you? Your father says this meeting is critical. Don't embarrass us." I smiled, slipped the phone away. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them. Dad pacing, Mom fixing Mason's tie, Melanie rehearsing her smile, and the senator, bored, glancing at the contracts, unaware. I gave Janelle a nod. She opened the doors. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "Ms. Harper Lynn, CEO of Lynbridge Strategies." The room froze. The air turned electric. As I stepped inside, my heels echoed across the marble, and then my mother's champagne flute slipped from her hand. The champagne flute slipped from my mother's fingers, shattering across the polished walnut table. My father's face drained of color, rage giving way to disbelief. But it was Mason's stunned silence I'd remember most. The ever-confident air, reduced to a speechless onlooker. "Good morning, everyone," I said coolly, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Shall we begin?" This is absurd," my father stammered. "You're a freelance consultant." "Am I?" I lifted a sleek black folder and flipped it open. "Because according to these documents, I'm the CEO of the firm you've been courting, Lynbridge Strategies." The senator sat up straighter, suddenly attentive. "I'm sorry, what exactly is going on?" "Oh," I said, turning to Melanie with a mock sweet smile. I would have been properly introduced at Christmas dinner, but, funny thing, I wasn't invited. Something about maintaining appearances. My mother opened her mouth. "Harper, sweetheart, this has all been a huge misunderstanding." "Has it?" I cut in, sharp as ice. I tapped a button on the panel. The wall screen lit up. "Let's review. Here's your message, Mom, suggesting I sit Christmas out. Here's Mason implying my career was a fluke, and here," I tapped again, "is Dad pleading for this partnership, completely unaware he's been negotiating with his invisible daughter." The room fell silent. Janelle moved between chairs, placing updated copies of the contract in front of each guest. Dad flipped through his in panic. "These aren't the same terms. These are different," I agreed. "I've made revisions. I've had time, years actually, to decide how I wanted this moment to go." Melanie leaned forward. "You can't do this. Lynn Mason has plans, expansion, investors, like how I had plans when I launched my business with no support," I said, "when I was dismissed at every holiday table." "That was different," Mom whispered. "We were trying to protect you from failure." "No," I stood, letting my voice cut through the air. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your social status." I gestured toward the city skyline beyond the glass. "Congratulations. Today the world learns exactly who the Lynns are." I stood slowly, adjusting the cuff of my blazer. "The partnership is off," I said, voice calm and final. "Lynbridge will be acquiring Marrowtech directly, and as Dad likely realizes by now, that effectively blocks Lynn Mason Holdings from accessing the European market." My father collapsed into his chair, the weight of it finally settling in. Without the Lynbridge partnership, without the capital injection from international expansion, Lynn Mason would remain exactly what it was, a dated regional firm operating under the illusion of relevance. "You can't do this," he murmured. "We're family." I paused at the door, then slowly turned. Family? That's funny, because just yesterday I was told I wasn't successful enough to be family. I tilted my head, feigning reflection. I wonder, will I be enough for Christmas dinner now? And with that, I left. The silence behind me was deafening. Through the glass, I glimpsed my mother pressing a designer handkerchief to her face, Dad staring hollowly at the shredded contract, and Mason, polished, prideful Mason, sitting slack-jawed, his plans crumbling like dust. Janelle fell into step beside me. "That was intense. Are you okay?" I glanced at the screen of my phone, another blinking message from my mother. "Harper, please come to dinner. We need to fix this." I smiled faintly. "Cancel the Christmas dinner," I said. "I've got better plans." The fallout came fast. Voicemails, emails, pleading texts. "Harper, we're still your parents. You're ruining us. This isn't how family solves problems. Please, let's meet face to face. Just us." I didn't respond. Linbridge finalized the Marrowtech acquisition, while Lynn and Mason's stock began a slow, humiliating slide. Business headlines weren't kind. Lewin and Mason loses ground in GMO play. Merger collapse tank. Family-owned firm. Linbridge takes lead in AI supply chain. 1 week later, I sat in my office reviewing new acquisition proposals when Janelle appeared again. "Your brother's here," she said. "Third time this week. But this time, he's alone." I pulled up the security feed. Mason stood quietly in the lobby, but this time, he wasn't wearing his tailored smile. His tie was loose. His eyes were tired. Something had changed. He looked tired. "Send him up," I told Janelle after a pause. Mason stepped into my office slowly, his eyes scanning the space he'd never imagined his little sister commanding. The panoramic skyline behind me, the art, the quiet power in the details. "Nice office," he said, voice low. "Bigger than mine at Lynn and Mason, though I guess that doesn't mean much anymore." "What do you want, Mason?" He dropped into a visitor chair. For once he didn't posture. "Melanie called off the wedding." I raised a brow. "Really? The perfect political couple couldn't weather a few headlines?" "She said she can't be tied to a sinking ship." He gave a hollow laugh. "Said I no longer fit her image." The irony hung heavy. "Dad's drinking again," he added. "The board's starting to panic. Mom can't show her face at the club. Everything's falling apart." "Because of me?" I asked evenly. "No," he admitted. "Because we built everything on appearances. Just like my relationship." I nodded once. "You all treated success like it had one look, and I never fit it." "I deserved that," he said quietly. "You deserved a lot more," I replied, my voice hardening. "Do you know what it felt like, watching you all celebrate each other's wins while pretending I didn't exist? Mom threw parties for your every promotion. She never even remembered what I did." "We thought you were struggling." "You never asked," I cut in, standing. "Not once. In 10 years did any of you ask about my company, my team, my vision? You were too busy dismissing me to see I had surpassed all of you." His silence said it all. Then real tears, not performative, welled in his eyes. "I was awful to you. Yes. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at him, steady. "Forgiveness isn't the issue, Mason. Trust is. And that's something you'll have to earn." Suddenly the door burst open. My parents strode in, ignoring Janelle's objections. "Harper," my father snapped, though the usual thunder in his voice was gone. "This has gone far enough," he continued. "You've made your point." "Oh," I said calmly, "and what point would that be?" "You're successful," my mother said breathlessly. "That we were wrong. And we see you now, darling. So please, stop punishing us." I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Do you think this is about revenge? About proving I made it?" I rose from my seat and walked to the window, staring out over the glittering skyline. No. This is about consequences. About finally making it clear that your choices, your judgment, your disregard, your arrogance have weight. We're your parents, my father said, his voice cracking. Everything we did, it was to protect you. I turned slowly to face them. No, everything you did was to protect your image. I gestured toward the headlines on my tablet. Well, congrats. That image is now shattered. A crumbling company, a disgraced engagement, and a family unraveling. What do you want from us? Mason asked quietly. What I wanted, I said, was your belief when I was building Limbridge, your respect when I succeeded, to be treated like family, not like a mistake. I paused, letting the words settle. But now? I don't want anything. My mother's tears began to fall. But I didn't flinch. I'd seen those tears before. When I didn't get into the right college, when I didn't take the job at the firm, when I let the family down. Please, Harper, it's almost Christmas. Ah, yes, I said coolly. The Christmas dinner I was too much of a disappointment to attend. Tell me, do you still need to maintain appearances? Or did that vanish when your golden boy got dumped? My father stepped forward. Just tell us. Board seats, equity, a public apology? Name it. I shook my head. You still don't get it. I don't want what you have. Limbridge is worth 10 times what Lynn and Mason ever was. What I wanted, I said softly, was a family that valued me. Not for what I could do, but for who I am. I pressed the intercom. Janelle, please escort them out and update the security list. Harper, please, my mother whispered. We can fix this. No, Mom. You don't fix a decade of dismissal with a desperate apology. As the door closed behind them, I sat in silence, city lights flickering below. Then my phone buzzed. Heard what happened. Your grandmother would be proud. Christmas dinner's at my place this year, Margaret. I smiled, for real this time. This year, I'd be spending Christmas where I truly belonged. I smiled, a quiet warmth spreading through me as if a weight had finally lifted. Sometimes, family isn't defined by blood, but by those who believe in you when no one else does. The next morning, I gathered my executive team at Limbridge Strategies. It was time. We were launching our boldest move yet. A complete restructuring of the consulting landscape, starting with the acquisition of 3 mid-tier firms across the Midwest. Lynn and Mason Holdings wasn't on the list. As I stood before the board, laying out our strategy, I thought briefly of the Christmas dinner happening in my parents' home. The glossy table, the curated wine, the hollow toasts, all of it built to preserve a crumbling illusion. Meanwhile, I was building something real. A week later, Janelle placed a small package on my desk. Inside was my grandmother's old leather business card holder and a note from Margaret. She always said you'd outshine them all. Looks like she was right. I placed it on my desk, right beside my nameplate. A quiet reminder, success isn't defined by those who show up when you've made it, but by those who stood by you when you were still rising. My family had wanted to preserve their image. Well, they got one, just not the one they expected. And me, I had the one I earned, respected, fulfilled, and completely free. So when someone asked me later, do you ever miss your family? I smiled, turned back to my desk and said, I have a company to run. Because that was worth more than any seat at their table. If you've ever been underestimated, cast aside, or told you weren't enough, this story is for you. I didn't build my life to prove them wrong. I built it to prove to myself that I was right to believe in the quiet fire inside me. If you felt something in my story, leave a comment. Tell me what you overcame. Or just say, I see you. Because I know how much that can mean. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't need their seat at the table. Build your own. And one day, they'll wish they had a place there.